Hello, my name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast shorts. There's no co-host on these shorts episodes. These are now around 2 to 4 minute, sometimes as long as 6 to 10 minute observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 2 to 4 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book your coworker won't stop raving about because it quote-unquote changed their life, but you can't see any difference in their leadership behavior. So how good could that author be?
Father of all and king of all. He renders some gods, others men. He makes some slaves, others free. And while this is true as far as it goes, and it goes back about as far as 3,000 years, the fact is that warfare waged by men against other men remains the ultimate proving ground for ideas and theories in books about leadership. This is because all aspects of human behavior come together in the planning, execution, and even the ending of war. Fear, anger, greed, honor, prestige, among many, many others. War also remains the key space where human ignorance, hubris, and a stubborn unwillingness to learn from past mistakes comes to a head. Generals and politicians alike seem allergic to the impact of memory, and old men, who it would seem would be fonts of wisdom, can oftentimes, during war times, prove to be dry wells. The lessons of war are learned anew in each generation, and it was proven so throughout the entire course of the 20th century and in the 21st century. Even with drones, satellites, rockets, and automation brought to you by the internet, and propagandistic, psychological operations brought to you by social media, war, the actual killing of another human being by a human being, continues to be a hive of hard lessons and painful stings. I anticipate it will remain so throughout the remainder the next 75 years of this century, especially or particularly or maybe even more horrifically when we finally outsource our material destruction to robots programmed by sophisticated large language models and driven by the warped human psychology of deeply human nature. Upcoming on the podcast this October and November, we are going to talk about all the exigencies of warfare, as we do every year. From wars with the Native American tribes that the U.S. cavalry fought in the late 19th century, all the way to the war in Afghanistan against the Taliban and the Mujahideen in the early 21st century. There are certain lessons a person, a listener, an observer can only learn when a bullet whizzes past their head. Learning from those who live to tell the tale of those kinds of lessons and absorbing those lessons with humility and applying those lessons to leadership is quite possibly the next best thing. And well, that's it for me.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast today. And now that you've made it this far, you should subscribe to the audio version of this show on all the major podcast players, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube Music, and everywhere else where podcasts are available. There's also a video version of our podcast on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the Leadership Toolbox channel on YouTube. Just search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button there on YouTube. And while you're doing that, leave a 5-star review if you like what we're doing here on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Just go below the player and hit 5 stars. We need those reviews to grow, and it's the easiest way to help grow this show. And tell all your friends, of course, in leadership. By the way, if you don't like what we're doing here, well, you can always listen to another leadership show. There are several other good ones out there. At least that's what I've heard. All right. Well, that's it for me.